1800 hours Pakistan Standard Time. Assalamu alaikum. This is Radio Pakistan. The news read by Sumaira Kamal. First, the headlines. Prime Minister has landed the significant role played by the United Nations in supporting Pakistan's progress towards attainment of sustainable development goals. Islamabad and Beijing have expressed the resolve to work together to thwart designs of their common enemies disrupting China-Pakistan economic corridor. Finance Minister says Pakistan is committed to strengthen its ties with Iran in all areas, including enhancing bilateral trade. Minister for Planning says a joint survey will be carried out by the federal and provincial governments to assess damages caused by recent floods in the country. In Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, Modi-led Indian regime has chalked out more sinister plans to suppress freedom movement through state terrorism. India has refused to accommodate Rohingya Muslim refugees in New Delhi. And now the news in details. Prime Minister Mohammad Shehbaz Sharif has expressed Pakistan's firm commitment to the purposes and principles of the Charter of the United Nations. Talking to the UN Resident Coordinator Julian Harness in Islamabad today, he said Pakistan has been contributing actively in the areas of peacekeeping, humanitarian action, climate change, and international cooperation for sustainable development. The Prime Minister appreciated the significant role played by the UN in supporting Pakistan's progress towards the attainment of UN Agenda 2030 and the Sustainable Development Goals. The UN Resident Coordinator briefed the Prime Minister on the ongoing activities of the United Nations in Pakistan, including humanitarian assistance, environmental protection, food security, and climate change. Prime Minister Mohammad Shehbaz Sharif says the China-Pakistan economic corridor is laying foundation for sustainable indigenous economic modernization. In an inclusive interview with the Chinese daily Global Times, he said the CPAC has helped Pakistan reduce the bottlenecks caused by past power shortages and weak infrastructure. The Prime Minister said we will continue to work closely with China to enhance the momentum of cooperation between the two countries. He further said all the construction of China-Pakistan economic corridor has become more concrete after achieving an early harvest phase focused on energy and infrastructure development. Shehbaz Sharif said we hope to complete major infrastructure projects as soon as possible, including the strategic Pakistan Main Line 1, which will further accelerate the transfer of industries and help consolidate our integration into the global value chains. Islamabad and Beijing have expressed the resolve to work together to thwart designs of their common enemies who want to disrupt China-Pakistan economic corridor. The resolve was expressed at a meeting between Deputy Director General Ministry of Public Security of China, Gao Fei, and National Coordinator of National Counter-Terrorism Authority, Mohammad Tahir Rai, in Islamabad today. The two sides were of the view that the common enemies and terrorists will be defeated jointly by both Iron Brother countries. Mohammad Tahir Rai emphasized the significance of cooperation in sharing of expertise in counter-terrorism domain. Gao Fei further appreciated the efforts of Pakistan in strengthening of cooperation to combat terrorism and extremism. Finance Minister Miftah Ismail has said the government is focusing on enhancing exports and farm productivity in order to help the country stand on its own feet. Addressing leaders in Islamabad Business Summit in Islamabad today, he assured to extend facilitation to the companies in exporting their products to the international market. The finance minister stressed that every company should export at least 10% of their products to earn valuable foreign exchange for the country. He further said a task force has also been established to address the problems faced by agriculture sector of the country. The finance minister said we will also have to create a balance in our incomes and expenditures and have to live within our means to address the issues of budget and trade deficits. Finance Minister Miftah Ismail says Pakistan is committed to strengthen its ties with Iran in all areas, including enhancing bilateral trade. In an inclusive interview with an Iranian news agency today, he welcomed cooperation between the two countries in energy and trade sectors. The minister emphasized on opening up more travel routes between the two countries to facilitate trade and people-to-people exchanges. He further said Iran should become part of China-Pakistan Economic Corridor project. Minister for Planning and Development Ahsan Iqbal has said a joint survey will be carried out by the federal and provincial governments both to assess the damages caused by recent floods in the country. Briefing media persons in Islamabad today about the relief activities being carried out in flood-ravaged areas, he said this will help to provide assistance to those families who lost their houses in the calamity, besides building the damaged infrastructure. Ahsan Iqbal said projects will also be put forward before the development partners in order to build a climate-resilient infrastructure to minimize losses because of disasters in the future. The Minister for Planning said the federal government has announced compensation of 1 million rupees each to the families who lost their dear ones during the floods. Minister for Law and Justice Azam Nazir Tarar says the government is taking all possible steps to provide relief to the people of flood-affected areas. Speaking on a point of order in the Senate today, he urged all political parties to avoid politics of division at a time of natural calamity. The Law Minister said the federal government will provide a relief package to the flood-affected areas in addition to those provided by the provincial governments. This is Radio Pakistan. Modi-led Indian regime has come up with more sinister plans to escalate state terrorism in every nook and corner of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir to suppress the ongoing freedom movement. The brutal measures were approved during a joint meeting of Indian Army, Police and Paramilitary Central Reserve Police Force at District Police Office in Shopian. Meanwhile, in a disturbing development aimed at enabling Indian citizens temporarily residing in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir to vote in the so-called assembly elections, the territory's Chief Electoral Officer Hridesh Kumar Singh today allowed them to get their names registered in the voters' lists. The move is clear violation of the UN-acknowledged dispute status of Jammu and Kashmir. On the other hand, 6 members of a Muslim family, including 3 women, were killed by Hindutva gang in Sidra area of Jammu district. India has denied to provide homes to Rohingya refugees, mainly Muslims, in the capital, New Delhi. In a statement, Indian Home Ministry said refugees will continue to remain in detention centres and eventually deported to Myanmar. North Korea fired 2 cruise missiles from west coast town of Oncheon this morning. The launches come after a day after South Korea and the United States kicked 4 days of preliminary joint drills in preparation for long-suspended live field training Ulchi Freedom Shield to be started from 22nd August to 1st September. Meanwhile, South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol has expressed willingness to provide phased economic aid to North Korea if it ends nuclear weapons development and begins denuclearization. In Syria, 3 soldiers have been killed and 6 wounded in an air raid on military posts in Aleppo. The UN Children's Fund UNICEF has awarded a British pharmaceutical company a contract to produce the world's first malaria vaccine. Malaria remains one of the biggest killers of the children under 5 years of age. In 2020, nearly 500,000 boys and girls died from the disease in Africa alone, a rate of 1 death every minute. UNICEF said it expects that demand for the malaria vaccine will be high among affected countries. The second one-day international of 3-match series between Pakistan and Netherlands will be played at Rotterdam tomorrow. The match will start at 2 p.m. Pakistan Standard Time. Pakistan lead the series by 1-0. And finally, the weather. Rain with wind and thunder shower is expected in Punjab, Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, Sindh, Balochistan, Gilgit-Baltistan and Kashmir during the next 12 hours. However, heavy falls are also likely at scattered places in South Punjab, South Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, Sindh and East Balochistan during the period. And that is the end of the news. For more news and analyses, log on to our website, radio.gov.pk. And also watch live streaming of our bulletins on the link facebook.com/radio Pakistan News Official.